Good afternoon, everyone. We are at the end of our study in the book of Joshua, and we have covered a second part of Joshua, which we didn't do the last time. And so today we want to do a summary of the entire book of Joshua. And I would like to begin by bringing us back to Deuteronomy chapter 18. Deuteronomy chapter 18. And we read from verse 18. It is at a time when uh, Moses is reviewing the events, the instructions, the commandments that had been given to the earlier generation of the Israelites. At the eastern shore of the Jordan, where they are now gathered, we have Moses speaking to the second and third generation of the Israelites who came out of Egypt. The first generation has have all died in the wilderness in the past 38 years. But now it is time towards the end of the life of Moses. And we know that Moses was forbidden to enter into the western shore of the promised land. And so in Deuteronomy chapter 2, he revealed the fact that he led the Israelites to conquer the lands of the Amorites above the Ammonites, which is the land of Sihon as well as Og and Bashan. And hereby we have three parcels of land that was dealt with. The first parcel in the north would be Manasseh, a half tribe. And then below would be Gad and then Reuben. In chapter 18, towards the end of the book of Deuteronomy, there needs to be a continuation because since Moses cannot go into the promised land on the western side, there needs to be somebody else raised up by God to do exactly what Moses has done. And so in verse 17, the Lord said to me, "What they have spoken is good." And so God says, "I will raise up for them a prophet." Now, the idea of a prophet is not just merely speaking of prophecies, of things of the future, but prophets have the innate ability that God speaks to them and through them. And so that was the need for raising a prophet and to lead the Israelites. And so a prophet would be somebody who can communicate with God very much like Moses. And so Moses is seen. And so a prophet like you, who is this? Moses. So God says he will raise up for the Israelites a Navi like Moses from among their brethren, the 12 tribes. And God says, I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them, the Israelites, all that I command him. Just like Moses, God says to Moses, tell the children of Israel. And so in this case, God will raise up a prophet just like Moses to do exactly the same. Now, as we move on towards the end of the book of Deuteronomy, and in this case, we're talking very much the in chapter 31. In Deuteronomy chapter 31, and reading from verse 14, then Jehovah said to Moshe, behold, look, the days approach when you must die. He is old, right? He is old. And as he draws older, it is time for him to pass on what he is doing to somebody else. And so he says, call Yehoshua. So the name of Joshua is actually Yehoshua. And he says, present yourselves in the tabernacle of meeting that I may inaugurate him. Now, verse 14, it says inaugurate, and we've covered some of these before. The idea here is the simple word of command. This is from the verb zava, uh, and commandments is mitzvot, which is essentially that God will charge him, command him, appoint him. I think all of these are good words. And this would be Joshua. And so publicly, Moshe and Yehoshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of meeting. Now, Jehovah appeared at the tabernacle in a pillar of cloud, and a pillar of cloud stood above the door of the tabernacle. And this is important because God is presenting and appointing, right? And appointing Joshua in front of everyone. In front of everyone. Now, what is a good recollection for us would be in chapter 32. At the end of chapter 32, we are told once again, then the Lord spoke to Moses very same day, go up this mountain of the Avarim called Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab across from Jericho. Look at the land of Canaan, which I will give to the children of Israel as a inheritance. And you will die on the mountain which you ascend and be gathered to your people. It means you die and the bones are gathered. Just as Aharon, your brother, died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. Because you trespassed against me among the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not set me apart in the midst of the children of Israel. Yet you shall see the land before you, though you shall not go there into the land. Now, this is a reminder that Moses breached against God. Now, this is a very serious offense. In verse 51, God says that you acted unfaithfully, right? Acted unfaithfully. God asked him to speak to the rock, but he was so angry with the people that he struck the rock twice. Now, God obviously was just and he was faithful to the people. He still brought water out for them. But in this little, what we call misdemeanor, God sees it as a major problem. In Numbers 13, when the first generation of the Israelites refused to go into the land, God says they will all die in the wilderness. And so for the next 38 years, they all died, including Aaron, right here in Mount Hor. The last person to die of that generation is actually Moses. And Moses needn't die, but because he trespassed against God by acting more righteous than God to be angry against the Israelites, God says, you cannot join me in the land. Now, why was God so harsh and severe with Moses? Because when the people and Moses saw God, saw what he did, and engaged with God, the people saw God in Mount Sinai. Moses went up to Mount Sinai, received the law from God, spoke to God, all the time in the tabernacle. Now, the idea that I'm trying to communicate is this: the closer and more obvious you are in the relationship with God, like the Israelites and Mount Sinai, and Moses with God, God was very severe with them. And hence God says, you cannot go in. Now, if Moses cannot go in and the job is not done, somebody else needs to take over, and that person is Joshua, the prophet that God will raise from among the people. In the book of Joshua, chapter 1 will be where we will continue. As a summary of the book of Joshua, everything hinges on Joshua's mission. Joshua's mission is this. Verse 2: Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan River, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. And every place the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you. As I said to Moses, from the wilderness to this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, the land of the Hittites, to the great sea, towards the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. And so no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Read this. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to them, to their fathers, to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn to the right or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. So you can see the mission of Joshua is so that he could go in and take the land, then to divide the land. And he needs to be strong and courageous. So Joshua chapter 1 verse 7, whenever we talk about strong and courageous, it is actually not an English word. Be strong means to be determined, right? Be determined. Be resolute. Be courageous is also another aspect of strong. It really means to be brave. And so be determined to finish the mission. Be brave to face not only the enemies, but the people. But remember, God says, I will not leave you nor forsake you, because as I was with Moses, I will be with you. This is a promise only given to Moses and to Joshua. To reinforce to Joshua, he only have one mission: conquer the land and divide the land. Make sure they stay on course with the book of the law that was given through Moses. Now, the entire book of Joshua is very much to fulfill the conquering of the land. And in short, many people will call this book the conquest. One of the things that we need to understand, that although God gave this as what is commonly called the promised land, it is a land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but it was only promised for them to possess. Now, one of the things that you need to understand, that the idea of possessing is also to dispossess. And so you need to go in to dispossess those who own the land originally fight them and take over the land. And so there was a lot of fighting to be done. And that was why God says, be strong and of good courage. Be strong and be brave. Be determined, be resolute to fulfill all the things that God has instructed Joshua to do. The entire book of Joshua is to conquer the land as God so instructed. It was a big piece of land from Lebanon all the way to the sea, Mediterranean Sea, from the river Euphrates all the way down to the south. Now, all of this was supposed to be done in the book of Joshua, but not every single place was conquered. Now, this is something which we will have to come to terms with, because what is important that we need to understand was that the entire conquest was really not completed. We read from Joshua 1 to 12 of the conquest of the major cities. He came in from the central to the south and to the north. He took 30 over cities and conquered a lot of the land there. We come to Joshua chapter 13. The first number of chapters talks about how it was conquered, when it was conquered, who they conquered. And in chapter 13, Joshua was old. We really don't know the age of Joshua, but it can't be that far off from Moses. He was advanced in years. And God says, you are old, you have advanced in years, but there remains very much land yet to be conquered. This is the land that yet remains. And so he outlines. And one of the things you would notice is that these were the land that was not taken over yet. The land of the Philistines. And then you see that there are 5 lords, and we read them again in the book of 1 Samuel. And then in the south, the land of the Canaanites, that borders with the Amorites. In the north, there was Baal Gad below Mount Hermon. So a lot of these lands were still left unconquered. These people know about the Israelites and the towns that they have conquered, and the Israelites are here to stay. But these others were not yet removed, and so they became the perennial problem. They came and they disturbed the Israelites. And in many cases, they came to conquer the Israelites as well. And so all this fighting back and forth continued on even after chapter 13. Now, in chapter 13 is where we take a break from fighting because Joshua was already old. From chapter 13 onwards, all the way to the end, we find that the land was divided. The eastern shore to Manasseh, Reuben, and Gad. Chapter 14, the west of the Jordan, each of them were divided. And then there was the land that was given to Manasseh and Ephraim first. After that, the land given to Judah. Now, one of the things that I have to highlight to you all is that all of these land were given as part of the lot. It was drawn from lots. This is very important, actually. The importance of the lot, like here, the lot fell to the children of Joseph. And this lot is what we all must be clear. The division of the land wasn't done by Joshua on his own thinking. The lot was actually done by God influencing the Urim and Tumim, the 2 rocks that the high priest keeps to find the will of God. by rolling the stones so that they can then know what God had decided. These were simple instructions that by the roll of the lots, which we call the Urim and Thummim, then we see the parcels of land being given to the children of Joseph, the land of Ephraim, the land of Manasseh, which is the western part, and then to each of the tribes. It went to the land divided towards each of the tribes. Uh, then the land of Benjamin, which is north of Judah. And then Simeon was given part of Judah, the land of Zebulun, the land of Issachar, the land of Asher, the land of Naphtali, the land of Dan. Now, Dan had a piece of land which was slightly north on the coastal side towards the Sea of Mediterranean beside Ephraim. But later on, they went north because they had a bigger group of people. They went up north to Lechem and they conquered the land, which was actually north of everybody's land. It was actually no man's land. And it was Dan who went up there and conquered, and therefore Dan became the land that was the furthest north of the land of Israel. Caleb and Joshua each gained their own inheritance. We spoke about the cities of refuge, where these are cities, 6 of them, 3 on the western side, 3 on the eastern side, as a place where if somebody had accidentally taken the life of another, the person can actually run there and hide. And so I mentioned to you that this is justice, where a person unintentionally kills another. The person doesn't have to die, but the person cannot go free. He has to run to one of the cities of refuge and stay there until the high priest dies. This is a form of ancient incarceration for accidental death caused to another person. Apart from the cities of refuge, the cities of Levites, all 48 of them, was given, and that includes the 6 of these cities of refuge. The Levites didn't have land given to them. They had cities and villages, unwalled cities, so that they can actually take care of the flocks, and so that when they are not serving God, they have a place to go back to. Now we finished this, and then the eastern tribes went back to the land. And the eastern tribe had built a huge altar just as a memorial to remind everyone that there are still 3 tribes on the other side of the shore. But it was almost misunderstood and the civil war almost broke up. But then the situation was pacified. Now, we're not going to go into chapter 23, but rest assured, chapter 23 was Joshua's farewell words as he recalled all the things that has happened. The most important that he left with the children of Israel were words that was given to them by Moses. So therefore be very courageous to keep and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, lest you turn aside from it to the right or left, or you go among these nations who remain among you. Why are they dangerous? Because these nations, if they intermarry, will lead their men to serve other gods. You shall not make mention of the name of their gods, nor cause anyone to swear by them. You shall not serve them, nor bow down to them. You shall hold fast to the Lord your God, as you have done to this day. And so all of these is important for them to remember. At the end of chapter 24, Joshua died. Joshua warned them as his last words, do not serve other gods. And so the people at the end of the book of Joshua says, far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It is only the Lord our God who brought us and our fathers, that's the first generation, out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who did those great signs in our sights, preserved us all the way. And so he says, we will serve the Lord, for he is our God. So let me just end to highlight a couple of things. This word serve. Serve, the ones who serve are called servants. Some people like to use the word slaves, but this one says, do everything the master says. If God is their master, then they said that we will do what he says because he is our Elohim. So this is a confession. This is a confession. And Joshua says, well, you cannot serve the Lord, for he is a holy God. Holy means special. He is a special God. How special is he? He is a jealous God. He protects his possession and doesn't let other gods touch them. He will not forgive your transgressions nor your sins. If you forsake or turn away from God and serve foreign gods, then God himself, Jehovah, will turn away and do you harm and consume you after he has done you good. And so the people said to Joshua, no, we will serve the Lord. And so ends the book of Joshua. Very sure that we as Israelites will serve the Lord and only the Lord. And so Joshua said, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen the Lord yourselves for yourselves to serve him. And says, yes, we are witnesses. We testify for ourselves against ourselves that we are going to serve God. Now, at the end of the book of Joshua, it ends this way. They make a confession. They know God is a holy God, a special God. They know that they have to serve God because he is our Elohim. And they repeat that we will serve Jehovah. And Moses says, you are witness. You testify. You have chosen. Serve him. And these are the closing words that God is the God of Israel. They have possessed the land, and now it is said that they have rest. Now, this is not Shabbat. Okay, this is not Shabbat. Why? Because this is not the same idea of rest that God did on the seventh day in Genesis chapter 2. This rest is about to be still, not at war. All the 12 tribes have stopped fighting, so they divided the land. That is what rest means. But individually, some of the tribes still have to finish their own jobs. And so the idea of rest is not the Sabbath. Please do not misunderstand. The concept of rest to the Israelites at this point in time is that they are no longer at war as 12 tribes, but each tribe may be at war to clear the land of the remnants of the Amorites. We come to the end of the book of Joshua, so that Joshua is the one who led the people to conquer the land. The name of Joshua, Yehoshua, that God saves and God delivered them and God gave them that land that they fought. And that's what they have. And so they learned one very important lesson, that God, Jehovah, is their God and they will serve God and God only. And so we leave the book of Joshua on a high note, that as Joshua became old, the people remembers who God is. And the conquest is complete. God's faithfulness is demonstrated as God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses took the eastern shore of the Jordan. Joshua now finishes the western shore of the Jordan, and they have divided the land according to God based on the lots that were drawn for them. And now they have gone back each to their own land as their inheritance. And so we leave the book of Joshua at this time. And next week, we will begin the book of Judges, where we continue from where we left off. But then in the book of Judges, something else happened. And so with this, we come to the end of the book of Joshua as a summary and as a sort of a reflection, uh, to remind ourselves to serve God. It is not an option to choose what to do, but to do everything that they are told. And so when we are saying that we will serve God, that's what we should be doing as well. And so with this, we come to the end of the book of Joshua. And may God bless the reading of his words as we have studied and gone through chapter by chapter, verse by verse.